everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Labor Live at 12:05. My name's Alex Jorgensen, the Communication Director here at the Alaska AFL-CIO, and we are in the third week of Labor Month. Labor Month is a month where we talk about all things labor, and this week specifically, we're talking about the billionaire class. We're talking about the economy and the rules of the economy that are not written to benefit working people and working families here in Alaska and in the United States as a whole. And today we are very honored to have a very special guest with us. Joining us today is Jody Calemine, the Director of Advocacy for the National AFL-CIO. Jody, welcome to the program.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So as you heard, this week we're talking all things economy. And as we know, a couple months ago, we had a pretty big piece of legislation that changes kind of those rules of the economy, or I guess maybe even continue some of the existing rules that don't benefit working families. And I think proponents of this big, beautiful bill try to brand it as something that's pro-worker, but we know it's really the largest kind of wealth transfer from the working class to the billionaire class. So could you kind of maybe explain some of those elements of how this bill really doesn't help working families?
Absolutely. So our chief economist at the AFL-CIO, Derek Hamilton, said to me once, every budget has a purpose. And this bill is a budget. So we should ask, what is the purpose of this budget? What are they trying to accomplish with this bill? And when you take a step back and look at the big picture, there are two significant things they are trying to accomplish. One is the tax cuts themselves, which, as you pointed out, disproportionately favor the rich. The second is that a dramatic increase in the amount of money the United States is spending on immigration enforcement, significant increase. All of that has to be paid for. So the rest of the bill pays for it. And where they dig into pockets, it's working families' pockets. Healthcare is cut, food assistance is cut, and they destroy hundreds of thousands of clean energy jobs to make this bill work, to pay for the tax cuts for the rich and all this immigration enforcement.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding that correctly, basically we're giving, it's not a handout, but tax credits basically to the wealthiest of Americans who can afford to pay more taxes in order to pay for those reduction in tax burden on the wealthiest Americans. We're taking away things that working families rely on.
That's right. And in particular, healthcare, jobs, food, those kinds of things, those very critical
things. And those
things.
are kind of the most three, when you think of what's important to families and working families in this country, it's putting food on the table for your family, making sure you don't go into life circling debt by accessing healthcare. Those are critical things. Without those, you really can't have a successful middle class, right?
That's right. And the way this bill ends up shifting money around at the end of the day, it shifts it all in the directions you would expect. The rich get richer, the poor get poor. The CBO put out a study showing that the wealthiest 10% will see an increase in their wealth as a result of this bill, while the poorest 10% will see a decrease in the amount of resources they have to live as a result of this bill. That's the shift that's happening. And that's just part of it. It's also a lot of this is being done to pay for a dramatic increase in immigration enforcement. We are going to be spending at the end of this bill 80 times more on immigration enforcement than we do on labor standards enforcement. What I mean by labor standards enforcement is, are we investigating health and safety violations in the workplace? Are we making sure people are paid the minimum wage and their overtime? Are we enforcing the National Labor Relations Act and people's right to form a union? That gets short shrift. Instead, 80 times more will be spent on immigration enforcement. The ICE budget alone will be bigger than all but 15 of the world's militaries. That's the kind of country that this bill envisions. A whole lot of militarization of our communities.
That's just so a bit depressing. Maybe isn't the right word, but it's an accurate word. Right? This budget is really a reflection of the values that the government is putting forward, and we are valuing deporting working people and deporting people versus providing people the assistance that they need to thrive, providing people the opportunities to be successful. And that's really kind of a sad indictment and a continuation of where our country is headed. I mean, I wish I had the image to put up on the screen of, as the wealth get richer, the poor get poorer. And that's been a trend that labor has been seeing for a really long time. But know some of the proponents of this bill, they really point to a few things specifically that go, this bill really supports working people. And I think they sound like good ideas, right? Like, we hear no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. But I know there's a couple of stipulations that really make these provisions not as pro-worker as really they're being advertised. So could you kind of explain a little bit of the detail there?
The problem with both of those provisions, it is a good thing to put a bit more money in a working person's pocket. And so we don't begrudge tax cuts ever for working people. The problem is the bigger picture. They come nowhere near, these particular tax cuts come nowhere near making up for all the damage that's being done to working people. So a report came out recently showing that for the bottom 20% of tipped workers, their average savings will be about $74 per year from this provision. The provision only lasts for 4 years. Obviously, it only affects your federal taxes. State or local or FICA taxes are still taken out. You don't see it in your paycheck right away. You got to wait for tax day to come around and apply for the deduction. So it's a very limited value. Meanwhile, 17 million people are going to lose Medicaid access. In a few weeks, we expect about 4.2 million people to lose coverage under the ACA, and about 22 million people to see their premiums go up by 22%. And all those healthcare cuts, even if you've got good employer health insurance, which a lot of you, that's sort of a bread and butter of a union contract, is that health insurance.
Right.
All that uncompensated care that is being created by this bill will bleed into the rest of the system. The AFL-CIO did its own study and calculated that as a result of this bill and all the cuts to Medicaid and the ACA, everybody else in employer-provided health insurance, we're going to see premiums go up by about $485 per year per person. So these tax breaks on the tips or on the overtime, they're gobbled up by these increases. Set aside the fact that the clean energy job attack that's in this bill, those cuts by taking offline a bunch of new sources of energy are going to keep pushing electricity prices upwards for lots of working families across the country. So these things end up getting swallowed by all the costs imposed on workers. They are, in some ways gimmicky because they sound immediately good. And I would say getting more money in your pocket is a good thing, but they're very limited. They're limited to 4 years. You get 4 years of this tax break if you're a working person. If you're a person who has a $30 million estate, your tax cut is permanent. But workers will get a 4-year tax break on tips and overtime. The other thing about the overtime provision is that they failed to cover everybody. There are a whole bunch of people left out in the aviation and rail industries who aren't going to get the benefit of that tax break.
So it seems like, in the bigger picture, right, they're dangling this little carrot saying, look over here, we're putting more money in your pocket with maybe arguably some decent ideas. But while this is such a small little minuscule thing adding to workers' paychecks, behind the scenes, they're taking away healthcare, they're taking away food assistance, and they're increasing the cost of healthcare for everyone who's already not losing it. So this is really just kind of a smoke and mirrors show to try to get buy-in from working people for a bill that arguably does nothing but hurt working families.
Right. If you want to raise wages, there are two immediate things one could do. One would be to raise the minimum wage, which would be a far bigger benefit for tipped workers than a break on their taxes and their tips. So raise the minimum wage, number one. Number two, especially everybody working overtime, to raise their wages, you would expand collective bargaining and worker power. So we negotiate higher wages and therefore higher overtime pay. Neither of those things were on the table in this budget reconciliation process.
Right. And as I think depressing as a lot of this news is, and I mean, this is this is something that's really going to hurt the trajectory of working families in this country for a long time. And there's no way around that. This bill has passed. This bill has been signed into law. But, from your perspective, what are some things that, our viewers at home can do to try to fight for a more just economy? Because the cause it's not over.
Yeah,
right?
it's not.
This isn't the end.
Well, there are two things. One is a very immediate thing. The way this bill is designed the pain is staggered. They have created a series of cliffs that we will go over and causing more and more pain for working families. Many of the cuts to Medicaid or to SNAP are kind of pushed off, especially after the midterm elections. Surprise, surprise. Some of the cliffs are coming upon us right now. And that is the bill did not extend the ACA premium tax credit, which helps keep premiums low in the ACA, in the Affordable Care Act marketplace. As I mentioned earlier, premiums are going to spike by about 75% for people. 22 million people will see those spikes immediately. Another 4.2 million people will lose their health care. We can stop this by pressing Congress right now, before December 31, when the expiration happens. Insist, this is a crisis, you got to fix it. Because if they don't do this, even if you're not on the ACA, all that uncompensated care bleeds into the rest of the system. We'll all be paying higher premium prices for our health care. So number one, something people can do right now is call their senators, call their member of Congress and say, fix this, extend those ACA premium tax credits before the end of the year. That is critical. So that's something that can help everybody avoid higher healthcare prices than they otherwise should. The second thing to do is the thing we always say, which is organize. We could easily throw up our hands and say, this system is so rigged, we are so frustrated. The reality is, yes, money has flooded our government. Big money runs things all the time, but we are sitting on a whole bunch of latent power as workers. When we get together and organize unions and increase our union density, we build power and we can force governments to listen to us, local, state, and national governments to listen to us. It's the only thing that's ever changed things in the direction of working people, is actually working people organizing, maximizing their bargaining power, and then exercising that bargaining power. You can make a change in your workplace, and you can make a change in your city, and a change in the entire country, even the world, through that kind of collective power. We have that power. We just have to exercise it.
Yeah, no, I really love that positive perspective. I've always been a big advocate of viewing the world from a glass half full perspective. Things are really bad, but guess what? Things have been bad for working families for a long time in this country, even before the labor movement really began. And labor has fought back. Labor has won huge, significant victories for working people in this country, and we can definitely do it again. This is not over. Just like Jody said, call your lawmakers, call Nick Begich, call Dan Sullivan, call Lisa Murkowski. These are all people that can make a difference in making a change for working people by, just like you said, let's bring back these tax subsidies. I mean, I know they're going into some probably pretty tense, maybe continuing resolution discussions about a budget. I know there's a kind of the never-ending government shutdown debate that happens what seems like every couple months. So there's definitely an opportunity to right some of the wrongs that were done. So Jody, thank you so much for coming on the program and kind of really demystifying what I think has been a very complicated bill that a lot of people really don't understand. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing at the National AFL-CIO to support America's working families.
My pleasure, and thank you for all the work you're doing too.
Well, folks, that is it for this week's episode of Labor Live at 12:05. Make sure to tune in next week. Next week, the fourth week of Labor Month, we're talking about politics. Ooh, scary word, scary word. A lot of people don't like to talk about politics, and a lot of people, frankly, think that labor unions shouldn't be involved in politics. Well, guess what? When our constitutional rights and our rights on the job can be taken away with a stroke of a pen by the president or by other executives in this country, it's important for all labor union members to be involved in politics. And we're going to discuss why next week. So make sure to join us. And thanks again for tuning in this week.